for mothers in particular, we all have to take the bar exam to get licensed. So what about making sure that all bar examiners across the states can provide adequate accommodations for test takers who are lactating and need to pump and need time to do that and need a sanitary space to do that? That's not a bathroom. Things like that are just like barriers to entry to the profession to begin with.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests with Morgan and Akins, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Defense Never Rests. I'm your host, Megan Henry. And tonight I am joined by three awesome guests, Helen Yoon, Jamie Saul, and Carly Wanos, who are here to talk about a heavier topic, or just not the lightest topic, I guess, we've had, but we're here to talk about bias discrimination in the workplace. So while not as light as normal, very important and super interesting. And these women have amazing points of view on the discussion, and I promise you will not be disappointed. So before I bring them in, I just want to add the disclaimer that everything that we talk about is everyone's personal view and not the view of any organization or firm that they work for, but just, what they've experienced throughout their career and their growth in their career. So with that said, let's bring them in. Hi, ladies. Thanks for joining me tonight on The Defense Never Rests. I'm so thrilled to have all three of you joining me together tonight. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So for our listeners who may not be familiar with my esteemed, co-guests tonight, I just want to run around and introduce each of you and get a little background on you so everyone knows who they're watching or listening to. But I want to start with you, Helen. So Helen Yoon is the Assistant General Counsel at Brinks Security, which, I piqued my interest because I just think of, giant armored vehicles and, big men with machine guns and and bulletproof vests. So from my standpoint as a litigation attorney, I'm like, all the risk.
Yes.
So
that's true.
But how did you land there? What was your career path to get there?
So I didn't go the big law to in-house path. I've just always been in-house. And I would say the first half of my career, I was in the electric energy industry in Texas. So I've been on the regulated part, the deregulated part. And then after I had my son, I took a little bit of time off. And this is where I ended up, which was pretty different from the industry that I'd been in. But as an in-house counsel, always been a part of a small legal team. You kind of have to do a little bit of everything. So they were looking for a generalist and a commercial transactions attorney. So that's how I ended up here. And I've been here for 9 years now.
Wow. Good for you. And I'm sure, at least from my background, I'm sure when I think about your day to day, just the varied things that you must see coming in as to the different things that your company has to experience on a day by day must be just, I don't know, every day must be different as to what you may see.
It is. And then I think for a lot of in-house legal departments, it's kind of where all the miscellaneous things come. If somebody doesn't know how to take care of it, we'll just send it to legal and they'll figure it out. So that adds to some of that. We get, just anything and everything.
Yeah. And it wasn't the kind of the theme in law school too, oh, well, if you go be a lawyer, you can do anything. so now you're sitting there doing it. You're handling all the tasks.
Yep. And it's a kind of a curse that we're the good issue spotters and problem solvers. So it's good and bad.
Yeah. So I want to move over to Jamie. So Jamie is one of my fellow co-authors for Networked. So I'm so happy. I think this is the first time you've been on The Defense Never Rests.
It is.
Welcome. I can't believe it's been this long. But I love how to describe Jamie as someone who makes tax law interesting and understandable, because your posts, whenever you post on LinkedIn about tax law, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This isn't making me fall asleep.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Try. because I did fall asleep in my first tax class. And so now I'm just like on a mission. And then I dropped the class. So that's my dirty secret. I never took tax in law school, but I am a tax nerd to the core now. So
yeah. So that was my question. I was like, did you want to be a tax attorney? Like, were you in law school? Like, oh, obviously not. You hated it.
No. I was a con law nerd. And I got the bug for con law in undergrad. Actually, I had just an amazing professor. And I got into law school. I did some work in kind of financial controversy, NASDAQ and the SEC, and realized I really liked that side of it, the kind of combination of numbers and analysis and creativity, and ended up at the Department of Revenue in Massachusetts for my final co-op in law school. And it was like this aha light bulb moment, because state and local tax, 60 or 70% of everything that I'm dealing with is con law arguments all day long. And the rest of it is a little bit of numbers and a little bit of creativity and a little bit of industry specific analysis. And it was like this marriage of that analytical side and the con law that I loved. I saw I can make a career of arguing about the Constitution all day long, and love it.
So you kind of found your unicorn.
I did, and I've been doing it ever since, getting out of law school. I spent 8 years at the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, and I've been in the private sector for 5 years now, just talking tax all day long.
And how was your transition from like working in the public sector, going over to the private sector? I mean, must have been an adjustment.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I went from one state to 50. So the knowledge learning curve was very steep. I think the couple of things that I took majorly for granted, things like snow days, in the state government, you actually still get them. A knowable schedule, because at the time they didn't even let you work remotely from home. It was like you weren't allowed to bring your laptop with you. You weren't allowed to bring your work home with you. And I'm not gonna lie, I miss that part of the job, especially through this pandemic. So that was tough, but I think it was the chance to see from a different perspective, to kind of take all that bureaucracy and insider knowledge on how a tax department works and how to speak the language of the backside, and then take it and use it for businesses and kind of clear the obstructions out of their way so they can get back to running business the way they want to.
Yeah. And I mean, you really do a great job though, too, making it understandable, because my eyes do glaze over a little bit.
I'm not offended. But find me the next viral docuseries that I can tease out a tax nugget over, because I'm running out of things to talk about with LuLaRich here. So
I could probably sit here and talk the whole podcast about LuLaRich.
Yeah.
Have you ladies
that
watched
sounds
it?
crazy.
Yeah.
I have not, but I saw what Jamie posted and it seems intense.
Yeah, it sucks.
It was riveting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, anyone who's listening, but I have to go off course a little bit. But I sat and I watched the first 3 episodes in one night, and it was like 12:30 at night. And I was like, do I stay up to 1:30 and watch the last one?
Same.
And like,
it's really good.
I know. And I have like a bunch of those leggings, and I had no idea. Like, they're just really comfortable.
You have the stinky leggings?
I got them pre-stinky. I got that. I think it was 2014. I was very cutting edge.
Got in before they went down. There we go.
Anyway, so Carly, I'm so happy to have you on. And I got introduced to you through Jamie. This is the wonderful world of LinkedIn and networking, which I just love it. And when I mentioned having this podcast that we're talking about, discrimination tonight, that Jamie had mentioned you, she's like, oh, Carly's great, have her come on. And I'm so happy for you to join us. But you have your own podcast. So let us hear a little bit about that.
I do. I have the employment experience, and I am an employment attorney for the defense side. So I represent companies who have been sued by their employees for things like discrimination, harassment, retaliation. And so the podcast is geared towards HR representatives and businesses, basically who want to learn more about those types of things and learn how to best practices to protect their business, basically.
And so, and you started that on your own, right?
I did. Yep.
So
I actually just started it this year. So
that's right.
it's brand new and I'm about ready to wrap season 1. So
So how did you come about to being like, I think I want to, I mean, I'm sitting here asking the question as you're on my podcast, but I can't take credit for starting this podcast.
No
It was started by
problem.
my managing partner. But were you just sitting like in bed one night and be like, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast. It's something I really want to do.
It didn't quite happen that way, but it was kind of an idea that came up because I think social media is so powerful and it expands your reach so much. And this was a way that you could connect and get in touch with so many more people. I work strictly remotely. So I'm not in an office, there's only so much reach that I have, so much networking. And then with COVID, the whole networking thing kind of went downhill very quickly. So, the podcast was a way to be able to reach a ton of people really quickly. And, that interested me. And also, for the networking opportunity as well, you get to meet so many people. Like you said, I met Jamie through another LinkedIn connection as well. So I just think that that's so interesting and really cool how that can happen.
Yeah. And I love it from a networking standpoint, and also just a creative outlet that I didn't realize I needed, but now I enjoy so much. Like, it's so
Absolutely.
nice to have this to be like, I don't know, it's fun.
Right. And it's a break from, if you do litigation, it's a break from litigation as well, which is nice.
Yeah. And it's funny from to look at it from my daughter's eyes though, because they both know I'm a lawyer, but they're like, but you do podcasts.
You're a YouTuber and you're a podcaster. You're not a lawyer.
Oh my, when they love to come in my office and try on the headset and play with all the things. And I'm like, please don't break anything. So as we sit here, so we are for, women in, great positions in our career. But I think I at least I can speak for myself. I didn't get here with a completely easy path. Like, there was definitely roadblocks along the way that, I attribute a lot to, my gender. And, there's just been, especially being lawyers, like, I think there's just a lot of, roadblocks along the way, either they be intentional or not intentional, or whatever they may be. I think we've probably encountered some of them. So without naming any specifics of specific firms or companies or anything, have any of you had experiences during your growth for where you are today that was like you had a major roadblock with either someone who's higher up who you got looked over for a certain position, or something that stands out to your mind that you really felt this is because of who I am, not meaning your skill, but either your race or your gender?
So it's a little bit different. I mentioned that I work strictly remotely now. I work for a large law firm in Florida, and the reason that I work strictly remotely is because when I was a younger attorney, I decided that I wanted to start a family, and doing litigation and just the stress and the amount of time commitment, I felt like I couldn't do both, right? So something needed to give. And so my firm was kind enough to allow me to do that. But I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity, or don't know that they can potentially have that opportunity and speak up in order to create that flexibility, right? So it's all about the flexibility that I needed. I needed to be able to, when women, especially attorneys, want to start a family and have kids, they need to be able to go to doctor's appointments and take time off, and not just for maternity leave, but everything else that comes with that. So I think that's really important, especially in the legal field. And now, because of COVID, I think that a lot of companies have seen that it is more feasible to allow that flexibility to be able to work remotely, because that's what is going to allow more women, again, particularly in the legal field, to stay in that legal field. I know that we see a lot of women going into law school and then maybe staying for 5, 6, 7, 8 years and then leaving. It seems to me that is, right around the time where they start families. So I
Mhm.
think to be able to retain more women, I think that that's absolutely key.
Yeah, I mean, and that point speaks so like I think probably speaks to a lot of us. It's
Mm.
like to your heart because I remember when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, being like, "Shit, how am I going to do this?" You know, because it's kind of like you have to have on the face like, "I don't have any kids. I don't have any kids. Don't
Mm.
worry about me. I don't have any kids. They're not going to affect my life." But like they do, like you, like and suddenly you can't stay, at the office until 7 o'clock at night because you have a daycare pickup or you have whatever going on. And I remember at that time, I needed to make it seem like I had no other distraction at home because if that it seemed like I had a distraction, I was worried I would get looked over for certain
Mm.
cases. Like, oh, well, she can't work on that case because there's a lot of defendants and it might be a lot of hours and you wouldn't be able to stay at a deposition that late or whatever it may be. So I tried to, like, you put on this persona that like, oh yeah, but I mean, I had a baby, but you don't like you don't want anyone to know that it changed how you could approach like your FaceTime, so to speak. So I
There's
remember
a saying that
yeah.
keeps coming back and back in mind that you have to work like you don't have responsibilities at home and parent at home as if you don't have work on the other
Yes.
hand. And it's that difficult tension, kind of trying to thread that line between recognizing that you do have responsibilities on both sides and responsibilities you probably enjoy on both sides. But to Carly's point, I think not only has the pandemic shown employers and businesses different ways that can work. I think in the early days, it literally threw open the curtain, right? We lived in a Zoom world. We could all see each other's families and things on the inside. And I think it was in some ways a breaking point, if you will, forcing people to recognize that lawyers are humans and we have families and we have things outside of the law, and having those things outside of the law makes us better lawyers. Whether that will continue going forward, I think is the big elephant in the room question right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When I was pregnant, the immediate question was, are you going to come back after you have the baby?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was the weirdest question. Like, well, of course, why wouldn't I? But, it just made me think maybe, it's because a lot of women decide not to. And so that question is normal. I didn't know. It's, I have one and only, so it's my one time. But I just found that question to be so weird, but just seemed like, pretty commonplace to ask that. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Oh, for sure. And I remember being part of conversations about other, women in the office, like, oh, she's not going to come back. And I'm like, why do we all think it's okay to talk about this?
Yeah.
And not ask that same question of our male colleagues who's maybe welcoming children into their family as well. I mean, I think this is just one of those good examples of pretty obvious microaggressions, if you will, against women. This assumption that, oh, you have kids, you're not coming back to work. God, it boils my blood. Just don't ask. Whoever's listening, don't ask.
I agree. But also, I think I had a train of thought earlier and it just flew away, but I pulled it back. But I remember those early times, when I just came back to work after having my first daughter and, realizing that it would really help if I could work from home some, but also realizing I could never ask to work from home because the answer would be no. Because I think the presumption of the higher up partners would be that, oh, my daughter would be home too. I was going to try to straddle the work and be a stay-at-home mom when really she was at daycare. I just wanted to maximize my time because commuting 30, 40 minutes in the city was just a waste of time. Whereas I could just sit at home and get a full day in. So I just didn't ask. And I just started working from home, secretly. And because as a litigator,
surprise.
Yeah, as a litigator, you could be someplace. I know what Lowe's was on my calendar. So I just started to do it regularly, at least once or twice a week, and just never asked. And no one asked me. And it made my life a lot easier. But I knew how to ask the question or ask permission. The response would be, no, we don't have a work from home policy. So I was just like, well, I'm just gonna make my own and just not tell you. and it worked fine for me.
It does happen though. I mean, I did when I was coming back, I went back full time, but I did ask for a slight shift in my schedule where, I would be in the office from 9 to 5, but I would work in the mornings before my daughter gets up in the morning. And it's still the schedule that I maintain now, but I did get some pushback on it. And I asked for it because I knew my 2 male colleagues with younger children had that same schedule.
Mhm.
And even
Oh.
still,
Good for you.
like, well, if
Yeah.
they have that schedule and it's okay for them, and I'm only asking for exactly what their schedule is, why
Right.
did I get
I
pushback?
think
It was, I don't know.
I think it's important too to educate the people who might be making these decisions who might not be in the same place that you're in, because they're not familiar with it, and maybe they might not know. Like Megan, you said your supervisor thought you were going to be doing daycare, at your home and litigating at the same time, and that's just not the case.
Mhm.
And also, we shouldn't. It shouldn't be seen as a negative or penalized for having and taking care of kids, because this is what makes us more well-rounded. I mean, this is what's going to, women and females, at the top, at the CEO place, it's going to, we can do great things. We are exceptionally smart. We can drive revenue. We can multitask, right? So, having us in those roles and creating the flexibility that we need, it's good for the overall company, really.
Mm.
I think it's important to note too that, you kind of make the assumption that the ones that are making the rules are men, and they're the ones that don't understand the plight of the working woman or the working
Mm.
mom. And a lot of times it's women too. Maybe they don't have children so I just, want to make sure it's not like a men against women kind of thing. It's,
Mhm.
maybe it's a parent or a working parent scenario. But we should note that.
Well, and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it's a really good point, Helen, because I was going to bring this up later, but I think it's a perfect time to bring it up now. I don't know if anyone read, there was this article a few years ago in the Atlantic about like how a lot of times women tend to push women down and prevent
Mm.
other women from advancing themselves in their career. A great article. A typical Atlantic article was like 300 pages long, but great points. But like that, what you just said goes to that too. Like I think there it needs to be a message out there that as we need to like help each other rise up rather than push down. And just because some female CEO might not have children, doesn't that individual still needs to respect the boundaries and the not limitations, that's a wrong word to use, but like what else is going on in everyone else's lives below them, whether it be men or women on their team. Rather than pressing people down and not letting them rise up, we have to kind of like all work together. And it's very kumbaya, but I think there needs to be a larger general work to kind of do that.
I've always wondered about that. You hear it referred to as the queen bee syndrome or whatever, and I've experienced it early in my career when I was a young attorney, and I've thought about it a lot now that I've gotten a lot older, and I just wonder, if it's just a result of there just not being enough seats at the table for us, for people like us, for women, or and they're protecting it at all costs. I've just always wondered that, and now that in the past few years, D&I and events of last summer, it's kind of blown that wide open, and I see more because there's a focus of I want to see more women on your boards. I want to see more women on your executive team. It's kind of opened that door, I feel like, and you don't really see. I noticed an improvement in that because maybe there are more seats at the table for us.
Yeah,
I don't know what you think.
I think I think they're, in my naive view, feel like there's always room to push a chair closer together to get another seat at the table. Like, I hate this notion that there's only like 10 seats, and no one else can sit there. Like, we can always make room. And you never know what can happen if you make room for someone, or take a chance on someone, and like allow them into the room. And I think I think the old notion is like, well, if I let her in, then what's going to happen to me? Is there only room to have one woman here, or, or one minority here? Like, whatever it may be. I think there's like that fear that you might get cut out of the equation if someone like you or similar to you is suddenly there as well, which I think we just need to move away from that. Like, that shouldn't be part of it.
No, and here's the thing that I have experienced it. And I think, Helen, mine was similar to yours. Early in my career, I saw a little bit more of that kind of scarcity fear. Not so much right now. And I'm a really firm believer. There is room for everyone. There is room for all of our different voices. It's not competing with one another. It is competing for one another to have those opportunities. And the more that we can kind of support one another through this, particularly among women or other groups who don't typically have a voice, the better for everyone. I was reading a report earlier today. McKinsey and the Lean In organization do a report every year on women in the workplace, and they published their most recent one 2 days ago, I think. And they had this observation in there that workplaces who support and celebrate women in positions of leadership find that their business improves for everyone in the organization, not just economically,
Absolutely.
but the culture, the fit, the operational improvement across the business benefits everyone. I can't emphasize that enough.
Well, I love, yeah. Well, when this podcast gets posted, which will be in about a week, can you link? Is there a way you can link that study to the post? Okay.
Yeah.
Because that would be interesting, I think, to read.
It was interesting to also Helen's point. I was contrasting that report, which does show some kind of metric improvements, if you will, in women in positions of leadership across corporate America wide, with the Law 360 Glassdoor or Glass Ceiling report from last week, which showed at least year over year for women in the law, there was zero movement in positions of leadership, whether it's equity or non-equity partnership or senior management and in-house. And that's frustrating. It says to me that, in the legal industry, we've got a ways to go.
So Helen, what do you see on your end? Because you are on leadership in-house. So what has been your experience sitting in your shoes?
I want to touch on, Jamie brought up microaggressions. And I've heard this from so many women at kind of like, not at the executive level, but that level right below. I wouldn't even call it a middle manager, but those that, you hear the same story a lot in those management roles, where they're worried about their perception to the executive management. They really watch what they say. I don't think they're being true to themselves. And I think it's just a product of being told, you're too bossy, you're too aggressive, you're too direct, you're difficult. If you ask those difficult questions, you're difficult, right? I've even heard, you're too confident. And I've always wondered, how many male executives or male leaders hear those words as negatives, or those words are listed on a development plan? I'm just going to assume not many. They're going to get patted on the back for those things. And so I see that a lot. I have my colleagues that are kind of at the same level as me, after a meeting, will pull me aside and say, that statement I made, was that okay? Did that sound okay? Was it too aggressive? And it makes me so angry that we have to check ourselves all the time. And, it's a double standard and a glass
Mm.
ceiling, because those things will be used against you when it comes time for promotions. So, that's the kind of thing that I see, from my colleagues, from my friends in other companies, whether it's in-house or just on the business side. So, it's there. We all see it. We all, have probably experienced it sometime at some point. And it's those microaggressions that,
Mm.
or the unconscious bias that's so insidious, because, as an employment attorney, I'm sure, like, how do you prove that, right? I don't know how you would ever be able to prove something like that.
Yeah, I was
So.
just gonna to pivot to Carly too, to like you must see some of this, on your side, or get some wind of this defending corporations. There has to be some of it that comes up.
Right. So believe it or not, I still have a lot of cases where there are just explicit statements that are made. So we need a man to do this job.
Whoa.
And also things like that, but also, sexual harassment type comments. So there's that. And then on the implicit bias, the unconscious bias, you really have to take a look. You have to dig deeper and see exactly what's going on, right? So are the reasons that they're saying that they made these decisions, are those really the real reasons, or was it for something else? How many females do you have working for you? How many? So I'm making the point of the plaintiff, by the way. I'm a defense attorney, but I'm arguing the other side right now. How many females do you have working for you? Why did you promote, 7 males this last year and none of your females, when comparatively speaking, the proportions for females are much higher, things like that. It's tough though. It's difficult. And the thing is that the unconscious bias is definitely there. And the people who might have the unconscious bias don't realize it, right? That's the dangerous part. They don't even realize that they're doing it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the TED Talk by Valerie Alexander. She did this TED Talk, How to Outsmart Your Unconscious Bias. And basically she walks you through the story. She tells a story and she wants you to close your eyes and picture it. She says, you're running for a flight and you jump on your flight and the pilot steps out and says hello. Then you go to a restaurant and you sit down and there's a married couple having dinner next to you. And she keeps going and you open your eyes. And she said, the individuals that you pictured, was the pilot a Black female? No, most people say no. And the married couple having dinner together, did you picture 2 men that were married having dinner together? No. So when I watched that, I thought that was a really interesting way to uncover that unconscious bias that a lot of people have, because it goes back to familiarity, what you're used to, what you have, your experiences, right? So your experiences and what you're familiar with, it might be the first thing that pops into your mind, but it's an unconscious bias and you need to be aware of it. And I think that that's so important. It goes back to the education, just to make people aware that is present and how to deal with it, so it doesn't affect, those around you and in the workplace as well.
And I love that example, because as you're going through that, I was like, oh yeah, it's a white male pilot, and I think that's just
right.
And then when I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, I think she got everyone in the audience with that for sure.
Yeah. But I think it's important from that. I have a young daughter, and I'm not going to lie, knowing that she was a daughter, it's motivating in that sense, right? To kind of show her an example of what it looks like to have a strong woman pursuing a career with ambitions and dreams, and who likes doing that, because I didn't have that in my life, and I want to make sure she has that, so that way, hopefully 30 years from now, we're not having this conversation again.
Right.
Yeah. I'd like to be that optimistic, but I'm not. Like, I think I think it's changed a lot, but I'm not overly optimistic that there's going to be so much of a drastic change in 30 years that we're not going to be still having some part of this conversation to some degree.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
prove me wrong.
it's
Getting there. It's going to take work though, for sure.
it's maybe just anecdotal, but just personally, the number of colleagues and friends that are at a certain level within their companies where their career development plan includes coaching for interpersonal skills. I've heard it so many times from women at a certain level because they're told, you're too aggressive, you're too direct, and this is how we're going to solve it is we're going to get you coaching. And so something's happening, like all these women are being told you have to get coaching for interpersonal skills. So, I would love to get some real metrics on that. How many women have been told that you have to do this in order to get to the next level? Because I've just heard it myself personally way too many times.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
And I almost like has me speechless because it doesn't make any sense.
I know.
I mean, coaching could
Well,
benefit
it's-
so many people. So maybe open it to everyone as opposed to just coaching for interpersonal skills because you're a woman.
And it kind of, to me, it goes to, a lot of things I've seen lately about like dress codes at school. Like, oh, well, girls can't wear spaghetti strap shirts, or well, maybe it should be can be wear spaghetti strap shirts. Maybe the boys shouldn't pull their straps, or whatever the situation may be. But it's like that same kind of idea. Well, you need to change. You need to be less assertive, and you need some coaching to make your approach softer.
And by the way, you need coaching.
Yes.
For those spaghetti straps.
Yeah. You need to learn to dress
Oh
more
my gosh.
appropriately,
Yeah, it's going to take work on both sides, I think. I mean, the burden, the responsibility is not just on the females to stop and change and, pivot. It's going to take change on both ends for sure.
Yeah, the message that sends to women that are climbing up the ladder is there's something wrong with you, that you have to get coaching. Like,
which just reinforces
Right.
the other stereotypes and discrimination against women generally, and our own kind of self-image, if you will, like buying right into that same stereotype. It makes me angry.
Yeah.
By the way, some people might like your overly confident personality, right? So why are you going to have to stifle that?
Right. Like, I mean, I feel like there's a lot, like in the courtroom, for example, if you're at trial, everyone, it's the attorney who comes in and owns the room and grabs the jury and gets all their attention. That's supposed to be a positive characteristic of that individual. And if you take that same individual and that individual is a woman in the boardroom, and now she commands all the attention, now she's too assertive and you need coaching to fix it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yes. So imagine being a female, a woman in, corporate America, and you're an attorney. So what's the message there? You love it when I'm being aggressive and direct and assertive at the negotiation table, but not amongst ourselves, not internally. You can't be that way. For me, I don't know about others, but I can't turn it on and off. That's just who I am. So I got to be me.
Yeah, and who you are is how you got where you are now. So I wouldn't change it for anybody else. I think it's doing you pretty well.
Right. And that voice is going to speak directly to someone. Somebody's going to want that from you. So I don't know why you would want to stifle it either.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
So
in some ways it underscores for me that just the sheer purpose of making sure that there's more women, period, that are reaching higher levels in their careers. So that way we don't, one way to undercut those kind of biases is just to make sure that there's more of us there. Cut it off at the knees and stop it at its threads,
Yes.
Right. And that's women supporting women, which you mentioned at the beginning, and lifting each other up, and not just because we might be different or because you don't have kids and I do. not allowing a seat at the table as well.
Well, it's funny, and I talk about this in the book that Jamie and I did and networked. And when the idea of network was brought up, that it was going to be these 20 women, coming together, or before the book came, but this 20 women coming together to help each other marketing, promote our marketing efforts. I was like, oh, 20 women are not going to do that. We're too catty. Like, are we really going to support one another? And it was the complete, it's exactly what happened. But I came in with that pessimistic attitude because in my own career, I've experienced working alongside a colleague and you being competitive with that colleague because well, they got that case. Why did they get that case? And I didn't get that case. And then in reality, you should be like, good for her for getting that case. Then, I'm going to try to get the next one, but instead you turn it into a negative. So when this, networking group was brought up to me, I was like, oh, this is never going to work. And it worked beautifully and it works beautifully. But I think our knee jerk, at least mine is to be like, well, women don't support each other. We want to push each other down to make each other, rise. And maybe that's a product of years of having to do that to some extent to get
survival mechanism.
Yeah. But I don't know if you guys have experienced that in your careers. I'm willing to put out on a limb that you have.
I think that might be also a product of just our industry, the legal industry, in that it is so competitive and it starts when you're in law school, right? The competitive nature. And I don't know, I can't speak for other industries, but I do know that there's a lot of collaboration that goes on within other industries. And I would really just like to see that in the legal industry as well. I know that we are advocating for our clients on opposite sides. But if we could find a way to stop or limit or reduce the competitive nature and be more involved in the collaboration side of it, I think that we could go really far with that too.
Yeah.
So, and Carly, you made me think about this for Jamie, because I think Jamie, you're at like a really good crossroads, because tax is a very male driven industry and probably very competitive in that respect. And then you've just merged it with law. And, I don't know. I don't know a lot of female tax attorneys. I know a few.
There's really
not a lot.
I can count on one
Jamie's
hand
the only
number.
Just call Jamie.
I can count on one hand the number of times I've been in a courtroom where it's been an all-female team. In fact, it's involved 2 cases in 13 years of practice. Two cases where the cases have involved all female teams on both sides. And it was really pretty amazing to be part of those teams. But you're right. There's most of the time I'm the only woman in the room. Here's the thing, when it comes to being the only woman in the room, that it took me a very long time to learn, I think, to the point about, standing in your own value and power as a person, not just from a personality characteristic, but, some of the other microaggressions against women lawyers, and I've seen it in mine, are you being mischaracterized or misidentified as the paralegal or as the court reporter instead of the lawyer? Are you being asked to go get the coffee or to go get the, copies of papers for whatever it is for the deposition, go get the exhibits? Are you the one that's responsible for the scheduling or the planning or these other things, like the administrative side of being a lawyer? And does that default to the women in your teams? I think often it does. And it took me too long in my career to recognize that. I think what I mistook as eagerness to volunteer, be like, look, I'm part of the team. I'm willing to do anything. Yes, I will go get all of those copies, and be able to say, no, that is the job for the support staff. And I love my support staff, but that is not me. I am the lawyer here. And I need to be recognized and celebrated and supported as that.
But I think I fall into that trap sometimes too, because I just want to be helpful. And I think a lot of times it's like our nature to be helpful, and maybe it's just as mothers or just as ingrained in this, but a lot of times I'm like, well, I don't want to bother. I'll just do it. I just want to help. and then as a result, it negatively impacts us, because then you're a default to do those types of, tasks.
It's inevitable. I sit in a room with male and female colleagues that are at the same level. Like, the women aren't at a lower level than the men. And it's inevitable. Oh, well, did somebody order lunch? And, a senior director or a VP lady will just volunteer to do it. And I think, part of it is that kind of that motherly thing, and we want to be helpful. I never see the guys volunteer to do that. I'm not saying it never happens, but maybe we're our worst enemies sometimes, in that respect. I'm
I
not
mean,
saying we just cross our arms and sit back, but it happens. It just shocks me. I look around and I'm like, why are you ordering the lunch? You can order the lunch,
and so Helen, and you have a double because you're an Asian American woman, and I mean Asian American woman. So you have, both sides of, bias and discrimination against you. And, how's that experience been throughout the trajectory of your career?
Got
I'm
it.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm not great with words all the time.
Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes.
80%.
Yeah, I feel like, it's definitely has not been helpful to have the kind of Asian stereotypes that are laid at us, and to be a woman, but then to have this personality that I have that's too direct or aggressive. But then that's my job, that's my role as an attorney. And so it's a double lose for us sometimes, because I think there's that, oh, well, you're the model minority, you guys are the worker bees. You're not really interested in leadership positions. You're not, kind of interested in that, or you're not a people person. You're just the worker bee. Or maybe they assume that there's that kind of bias of you should be the quiet, submissive Asian woman, and so I do not fit that mold. And maybe that's why it's jarring to some people. Maybe it's just because I'm a woman. Maybe it's just, I don't know. But I have wondered that quite a bit in, recently. But I really did it before. And it's really affected my self-esteem. Because when you start hearing that, and I just think, yeah, but that person is the same way, yet they're not being told that they need to go get a coach or work on their interpersonal skills. And so I just started thinking, well, maybe it's something else. And the more I started looking into it, I just, thought, yeah, maybe it's that. But again, I don't know for sure. That's why it's so insidious. You just don't know.
Now, Helen, have you had people speak to you like that to your face, like generalize your whole self in categories based on your race, like to you? Like that has to like infuriate you.
I don't think they've uttered the words to me, but yes, the way that they react to me or act towards me, like, they don't let you finish a sentence, but that could be just being a woman, or maybe it's that person's personality. But I don't think they ever kind of throw those words in your face. It's just how they react to you, and then you think, maybe it's something else. So that's a hard one, and I think as women, we wonder that all the time too. It's like, if a man would have said this, would they have said the same thing? So I question myself twice. Because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm an Asian woman? So.
And it's got to be exhausting. I mean, it's exhausting for all of us to walk through life, like second guessing things that, oh, should I have said that? And I mean, I do that enough just as like a person. Like sometimes you have like, you just say things, you're like, oh, I wish I could take that back. But then to double check like how you said it, because, oh, well, are they going to perceive this way because I'm a woman, or I'm an Asian woman, or, I'm a Black woman, whatever you might be. Like you have to check and double check what you say, because you might, not offend someone, but just make someone think something different. It's
It's
exhausting.
exhausting. It is exhausting, but I have to tell you a positive story.
Mm.
I, I had a wonderful mentor and general counsel who said to me, he sat me down and said, you do you, because I kind of ran over some, this is what I want to tell the business guys, does this sound okay? And he said, you do you. And he didn't second guess me. And that was so empowering to me that I carry that every time I have to second guess myself. I say, no, I'm going to do me. I'm smart.
Right.
I know how to read the room. I know how to read people. And I'm sorry, this is part of my personality to be direct. And sometimes that's what you expect of me as a lawyer. So I'm going to do me.
Right. I mean, and you don't work there to be wishy-washy. Like, are any of us hired to be wishy-washy? Like,
no.
oh, well, maybe you should do this, but I'm not sure.
Actually, I heard a podcast, speaking of podcasts, several months ago, on that, like the great lawyer answer of it depends. We all love to hate that answer. And this was a tax lawyer, a woman who shared this nugget of, our clients hire us to give them an answer. And it depends is not what they hire us to give them, right? And I think it kind of speaks to this point of, we are who we are trained to be, if you will, as lawyers, and standing in kind of our knowledge base, our power and our experience behind it is part of what makes us valuable as lawyers, as people, as women, as contributors to our community. Being able to stand in that. I like that you do you. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish
And
I wish there were more managers who had that. Yeah.
It's so true, because I think, as cliche as it might sound, you need to stay true to yourself, right? And not everybody is going to like how you act or react in every single situation. And if you're always trying to, please this person because he doesn't like when I say this, or please that person because he doesn't like that I say that, you lose your message, you lose your voice, and you lose yourself. Like we were talking about, there's room for everybody at the table. And I think everybody has, their own specific voice that your clients or your customers are going to connect with. And I really, really think that you need to stay true to yourself and to who you are and how you want to present your message, because there's customers and clients out there that want to hear from you. They don't want to hear from you the diluted you because you're worried about, person A needs me to say this or person B needs me to say that. So I love that you do you, and staying true to yourself always, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like I think I'm going to tuck it away, and that's going to be something like I say to my kids too, because I think it's a great message for them. Like, I mean, think about it. Your kids have such different personalities. I have two of they're like polar opposites, and they each have their strengths. And it's, I think you do you is such a great message for either of them to keep them.
And you can make yourself crazy always trying to worry about that, right? I mean, you could drive yourself insane.
I mean, I think about it too, to like, even with like writing reports for clients. And I remember being like a younger associate trying to write a report for the partner in the partner's voice. It's near impossible. It's like, it is an exercise to fail, because how are you ever going to do that? And
especially with writing.
Yeah. And it's over and over and over again. And once you get to the point that you just write the way you write, and you don't need to write as if you're writing for somebody else, it's you being yourself, and it's so much more genuine for the client. And the message is still going to get across. It's just going to be in how you want to deliver the message versus you writing the message for, Joe Smith Partners report to send out. And I think
can't wait for the day when we use Jane Smith Partner.
I know.
As the example.
Yeah.
I know. What did I just
I
do?
make a point of it, and it goes to kind of those little things that we were talking about, in how you write or how you communicate and things. I make a point now. I default to this female pronouns for everything. If I'm going to be an example, I'm going to say, she did as my, Jane Doe, whatever it is. And I've instructed my support staff in my office, if it's coming from me and you're editing something of mine, you default to female pronouns, period. And if you're going to go like he, his, or he, her, she, him, whatever, female pronouns first. You got to start changing something somewhere.
Not only is she doing it, but she's instructed all of her support staff to do that as well. Yeah. I love that.
I love that.
There are no him, his, or he in my reports anymore.
I know. And thank you for correcting me on that. I shouldn't even be on this podcast saying Joe Smith.
But that's it's an example of what we're talking about, right? This kind of like the struggle that we are cutting up against as women in professions and women pursuing careers and ambitions. Just that like the teeny little things like what pronouns are appearing in there and how you use them. And I could go on, little things. We've got the implicit stuff that we've talked about. We've got more explicit kind of structural barriers for mothers in particular. We all have to take the bar exam to get licensed. So what about making sure that all bar examiners across the states can provide adequate accommodations for test takers who are lactating and need to pump and need time to do that and need a sanitary space to do that? That's not a bathroom. Things like that are just like barriers to entry to the profession to begin with.
There was a woman who didn't she give birth after the bar exam?
Yeah. During.
Or she was
in labor on day one. Yeah, she was in labor on day one. This was last summer. I remember this vividly. She made it through day one. She went to the hospital. She delivered, and she took day 2 from her hospital bed.
Oh my gosh.
She passed the bar exam, but
I can't imagine. Well, good for her.
2. Yeah, good for her.
She should have after all that.
Yeah, I had a friend in my first year class who our first semester finals, she was in labor. And she took all of the finals and then went and gave birth. And I just thought that was crazy. So that's amazing to me.
Yeah. It is. The law school that I went to required 4 co-ops in order to graduate. You kind of went on a quarter system and alternated, and you did your co-ops. They all had to be 12 weeks. You had to do them full time. And I remember I think it was my 3L year. One of my classmates was pregnant and she was due shortly into her co-op rotation. And she had made arrangements with her employer of like how she was going to be able to work afterwards. Don't get me started about parental leave. That's its own episode.
A whole another episode for sure.
Its own episode. But I remember the school threatening not to let her graduate because she wasn't going to fulfill that requirement on time because she was going to have an infant or a newborn, and she would only be able to do, like 8 weeks of the 12 as opposed to what it was. And it infuriated me that like, these are actual structural issues that so many women face in just getting into the profession in the first place. Forget accelerating up the ladder, but just getting their foot in the door. We don't talk about it enough. And we need to, so that way it changes.
Yeah, I remember, going to the hospital, I think this was my second, and taking calls from the senior partners, like with questions about stuff. And I was like, by the way, I just got induced. So
not a good time.
I'm not going to be available for like 12 weeks. So, and I remember that conversation was super awkward. I felt awkward telling them, not because of being induced, but I was like, oh, like, what are they going to think I'm not on board? Like I'm not committed enough.
They're going to think you're on vacation for 12 weeks. Right.
And I even had certain people make comments like, oh, well, you're about to go take vacation. I was like, well, I'm going to have a baby.
No,
it's actually the opposite of a vacation.
Yeah.
It's probably easier to be at work.
It's quieter.
Yeah. I could go into my own things about maternity leave. I did get bored on maternity leave, but whatever. I just like to have lots of things going on, I guess. But so, I know we can't solve the problem, and we've done what lawyers do best, is issue spot and provide anecdotes. But I mean, what are some things we can do? Is it mentorship? Is it, like being in the positions that each of us individually are in? Is it, leading by example and providing mentorship to younger, female attorneys, either in our own organizations or, just ones coming out of school? I don't know. What is it? I always default to mentorship because
Mhm.
I had a few very strong female partners as mentors through my career, and I think that really helped
Mhm.
me. So I think that just helps everybody, but that's not, I mean, that what helps me is not certainly the case, but I think, I don't know, I think that is something that, helped guide me. So why wouldn't it help others?
I think
What do
it's
you guys
that
think?
and sponsorship. I learned the difference
Yeah.
between the two this
Yeah.
year, which I didn't before. But mentorship is being able to be. I think of it as more like a sounding board, kind of learning on the fly. But sponsorship is me using my power,
Yes.
my bargaining power, my trust network to pull someone up to the next
Yeah.
level of their career. And I think we
And
need more of that
Speaking up for
sponsorship.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking
like
up for
that.
them
And
on
Help
their
on the
give,
behalf.
yeah,
Yeah.
and giving them the opportunities, that you wouldn't normally get to work on that big high profile case or that project, that puts you in front of executives and leadership and gives you that opportunity, whether, or even the board of directors to, be able to have that. And you won't have that without a sponsor. That's,
I think we
for
need that
me,
particularly right now as we're
yeah.
switching to a hybrid work world or a mostly remote work world. This concern that, the McKinsey report raised it, and so many news articles have raised it, that working from home and not being present or with that face time in an office will lead to this opportunity risk that you won't be the one first in mind, put on projects and put on, new cases or new things coming in the line. So I think that's where that sponsorship, that very intentional highlighting of someone for an opportunity, even if they're not, the office next door that you're going to pop into, is really critical right now. Sorry, I cut you off, Carly.
No, 100%, right?
I mean, first of all, I naively didn't know about sponsorship being different than mentorship. So thank you. Because when I'm thinking about mentorship, I'm thinking about that sponsor, like the definition of sponsorship is what I'm thinking of. But bringing up the difference in the workplace is really important because it is so different now. Like in my own firm, we've had, I think, 3 new attorneys on board recently. And I haven't even met them face to face. I think I had my first conversation with one of them recently via Zoom. So it's so important to try as leaders to try to reach out to those new people because they're not going to come to you, like, unless, at least most times not, they're not going to come to you. So I guess the onus is on us to try to make the connection and help, and provide that sponsorship for the right person. Because unless, I don't know, I think in my experience, they're not going to just find you. I don't think so, at least. It's intimidating. I would have been intimidated to like reach out to the, a more senior attorney or partner and be like, hey, come talk to me. Help me.
I'm curious, Carly, are you seeing with kind of the businesses that you advise any like really good practices that some of them have put into place to actively address or break down kind of barriers, or just like reimagine what a better and more inclusive, stronger workforce would look like?
Not particularly. I haven't seen it with my clients, but I think it's a combination of all of the above, everything that we've talked about, right? So it's educating the people at the top who may not have similar situations that we do or females have. Mentorship, so you have somebody, but also I love the sponsorship idea. I think that that's so important. Of course, a new young attorney is going to be intimidated and not want to raise her hand and say, hey, I have this situation. What options are available to me? So we've had the experiences, a lot of them, we've been through a lot of this. And to say, these are the options available. And not only are these options available, but I'm going to go and speak up on your behalf and make sure that we secure one of those options for you. I really, really like that. I think that's so important. I'm glad that you brought that up because I forgot about it actually.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think there's also like getting involved with like your alumni association with, graduating attorneys,
Mm.
because I think it's not only important to people in your own organization, but like, who cares if they're not working for your firm or your company, to help someone. I would have appreciated this so
Mm.
much, graduating and not, knowing what the heck I was doing, and having someone who was in the world to help kind of provide advice or, connect me with the right people, and just having that guidance along the way. So I think trying to make those steps with whatever makes the most sense for you to help others, I think it would be so valuable to those
Mhm.
coming in.
Thank you.
So we are way out of time. That's what happens when you talk about things like this. Because we probably could have offshot. I think honestly, just for our listeners, I had an outline and I don't think we talked about it. Well, we kind of touched on it, but I'm like,
We stuck to the outline. But we came up
Sort
with
of.
3 more podcast episodes. So we'll be back with those.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I was just going to suggest. I'm like, well, we kind of offshoot. So stay tuned. We'll probably have a few more episodes, part 2, 3, and 4 of this.
I do want to, this is my throw out for you, Megan and Trisha and your team there. I want to start seeing the conversation turn. I do think highlighting the things that exist is important, but I want to start seeing the conversation turn to how intentionally can we change it? What is going to happen and what can we do about it? Because I think we are all starting to be in positions where we can do something about it. And I, for my own benefit, want to learn what those are. So there you go. That'll be next episode.
Yeah. I think we just like landed it too. Like, okay, we've spotted the problems. Now let's solve them.
Okay. We'll brainstorm for next time.
So thanks so much, ladies, for joining me tonight. And, let's stay tuned for, I hope you're all on board. You're on record right now. So you're going to come back, right?
We'll be here.
Yes.
All right, I got everyone. And for everyone listening, if you like what you hear, as always, please subscribe to The Defense Never Rests on Apple Podcasts, or you can find us on YouTube at The Legal Navigator.